So I'm super excited to talk to Meredith today. But the way this is going to work is in the chat, you can say hi and stuff like that. But if you have a question, there's a Q&A button. So there's a Q&A button at the bottom there that you can click on. And we want to make this as interactive as possible. So you guys are already hitting the poll and letting us kind of know where to steer the conversation. If there's a specific question that you have that comes up while Meredith is talking, I'm going to be looking at the Q&A and helping her kind of keep up with the questions. So make sure to ask it in the Q&A. Again, we're going to really customize this talk depending on like what you guys want to hear about. And I'm really excited for this topic because she's going to be talking about sales redefined and particularly about uncertainty and turning it into a competitive advantage, which there's been a lot of that lately here in the last 90 days. Been a lot of uncertainty. But a real quick introduction on Meredith is she was voted in the top 15 business growth experts to watch and the top 41 motivational sales speakers. And I've watched a lot of her speaking on YouTube actually. And I bet in person it's a lot more entertaining and it was pretty awesome to watch on YouTube. So I'd be really excited to see you talk in person sometime. But she's really passionate about helping her clients learn the strategies they need to turn uncertainty to their competitive advantage. And she's also a best-selling author of like 8 books on sales and leadership. So Meredith, it's awesome to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. I love the participation in the chat. I can just feel the energy in this thing right off the bat. So thanks.
And one thing Harvey said is he loves the cabin vibe. That was the first thing I commented on when we got to chat on Zoom too. You got a pretty cool setup there.
Yeah, I've started to use virtual backgrounds a couple of times, and people keep saying, put the cabin back up. This is my home here in Asheville, North Carolina, and my office here is in the loft. I am looking at turkeys in the backyard, and I got an albino in my backyard.
No, super cool. So we got a bunch more people hopping in. Let us know where you're coming from in the chat. And I thought would be kind of cool to start is just kind of a little icebreaker question. What do you remember about the first sale that you made?
Painful. I'll never forget. I didn't grow up that kid who wanted to be in sales, and I got my very first job in building referral networks for doctors, where I was just supposed to go around and deal with the doctors we already had referring into the practice. Well, all of a sudden, the competitive boom hit the marketplace, and the doc walked into my office and he said, "I need you to make cold calls." And literally, he went back to make patients. I walked into his office, which had a bathroom in it, and I threw up. And because I was sick at the thought of doing it, but I needed the job. And so I forced myself to get on the phone, and I forced myself to make cold calls. And that led to the most painful year of my life until I figured out how to sell in a way that worked for me. So I get an A for perseverance, a D- for style. But ultimately I came out the other side, and I think that sales is the greatest profession there is.
No, I love that. I have to ask you about the fear around cold calling, because I definitely relate. My first sales job was actually going door to door selling house painting services. And I was like the shy kid in high school. So this is like 19. And I remember in a small town, there was only 5,000 people. And that was what I was worried about. It's like, I might like talk to someone and ask them for something. And this might be someone I went to, whose parents had a kid in high school that I went to school with, but where did the fear of cold calling, where do you think that was coming from? And how did you sort of get over that over time?
Yeah, the fear of cold calling for me came from, I was raised in a pretty traditional family. I mean, I'm old enough that my father was the breadwinner and my mother stayed at home with us. And my father had his own business. And everything was about not bothering my father at work. Every message was, your father's at work. Don't bother your father at work. Don't call your father for anything. And so I had a major fear of the phone and bothering people when they were working. And in my mind, sales was about bothering people. It wasn't until I flipped the script in my head and started to think, the moment that I wanted my spouse or my kids to eat healthy, I was the pushiest person you'd ever seen. Or, friend would go into the hospital and somebody had to get a hold of the doctor. I was the first person on the phone. And it wasn't until I flipped the script that sales is really about helping people. And if people have a problem and you've got something that could help them, then once I flipped that in my mind, I guess really in essence, I would say once I made it less about me and more about my customer, that fear just evaporated. I was so wrapped up in me, what people were going to think if I bothered them, what was going to happen if I got rejected. I was so caught up in me that I wasn't focused enough on the customer. Once I made that flip, sales was easy.
Ooh, this is really interesting and maybe like a really good transition into what we're talking about today. Do you think that's going on right now too, with the fear that some salespeople and just companies actually in general have around, like there's a lot of, I got to be really careful with how I prospect. I don't want to be too pushy. Do you think any of that's going on right now? What's your assessment of all the stuff going on right now?
I think there's so much of that going on right now. Let me just tell you a little story about just how I really built the bridge. Was I was working for a group of physicians, and what they were known as is cataract cowboys. It's meant that what they wanted to do was to be in the surgery suite, and my job was to get enough referrals so they were in the surgery suite. And this was back when you just were first allowed to market and sell medicine. Well, people used to ask me, they'd say, how could you sell a doctor's services? And I used to say, my doctors do 1,200 surgeries a year. They cut on eyes 1,200 times. Their competitors cut on eyes 250 to 300 times a year. I don't care if you go to my doctor, but I want you to know this level of experience versus this level of experience. You choose. And and I think that's what we have to get. We think first of all that we're bothering people. And what we're trying to do is our products and services, they all look vanilla to our customers. Everything looks the same. And until we can separate them, I think that so many of the sales processes and techniques that we were taught focus on the close, the upsell, the cross sell, the art of the close. And we got all hung up on closing. When I teach sales, I'm always like, I don't care if you close the deal. I could care less. Your job is to talk to as many people as you can, identify the problem, and make sure they know they have options.
God, I wish you were everyone's sales manager.
Yeah, right. But you'd be surprised. It drives close, right? I mean, it just really
Yeah.
does, because the moment that you stop worrying about closing the deal, your energy changes. We talk about being in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm about to talk about energy, but we really are connecting energy to energy. And the moment that I'm worried about closing the deal, Jason, you feel that as a customer, because all of a sudden this conversation feels more about me than it feels about you. The moment that I'm razor like focused on what's going on with you and going, I can help him. I'm going to tell him this. I'm going to share this with him. I need to ask this question. You feel a different energy coming off of me. And it feels like your goals are more important than my goals. And that's what differentiates you, especially in an uncertain marketplace. Because if you're focused on yourself, you're desperate. And if you're desperate, you smell, and you can smell that miles away. And people don't want near desperate, especially in uncertain times.
Yeah. They say desperation's a stinky cologne, right?
It is a
Um,
stinky, you can smell it so far away.
so let's dig into that. And just a reminder, everyone, because I see people asking questions in the chat, hit us up in the Q&A if you have questions. And it sounds like people are really resonating with this topic. And it's something that I see in our work too, where people are just, they almost can't get over this, like, I feel dirty about what I'm doing. And then when
Yeah.
you take a look at what they're saying in emails and how they're prospecting, what they say over the phone, you're like, well, I would feel kind of dirty too if I was really that selfish about how I was prospecting and was just only asking people for stuff and not giving them. What's a practical thing, like when you're working with companies right now? Because this has been like a huge transformation. It seems like almost in your business too, where you were like the go-to person right now to like help companies navigate through this. What are some practical things that someone that's, thinking about, well, how can I be more you oriented towards the prospects and my customers versus me oriented when I have all this pressure and like financial pressure, maybe even to hit
Yeah.
my quota?
Yeah. First of all, the number one thing I'm going to tell you, and this is based off research that I've done for a book that's coming out in the fall, and the book is called Thrive: Turning Uncertainty to Competitive Advantage. And in essence, what I did was studied companies that are still in business, thriving today, that have been around since the late 1800s. That means
Oh,
they've come
wow.
through World War, economic depression, and yes, they have survived a pandemic. And I'm going to give you one of the steps right now that I believe every salesperson ought to be doing is, first of all, let's take the question of to sell or not sell during this pandemic. You need to sell. And the reason you need to sell is because if your customers do not hear from you, they assume that you've gone away, right? The second is you're not going to understand what to sell if you're not talking to your customers. So I tell all of my clients, I want you to make a list of your existing customers because I want you to focus more on your existing customers than I want you to focus on new business. And there's a reason why, because if you focus on existing, the new business will come. But I'm telling you to go back 4 and 5 years, people who have done business with you at some point. And I just want you to reach out and I just want you to check in and ask them how they're doing, how things are going. And then I want you to be quiet because here's what's going to happen. Number one is you showed the gesture that you care. So they're going to be loyal to you, right? People need to be cared about right now. They need to be listened to. But the second is they are going to give you an unbelievable gift. And the gift they are going to give you is they're going to start talking about their challenges, their opportunity, and how this pandemic is treating them. And in that message, you're going to hear the ways that you need to change your products or position your products so that they solve their problems. The way that you're selling right now, if you're still using the techniques you used in first quarter, you're using techniques that are out of date because everything shifted the week of March 9th. But the only way to understand the language to use is to really talk to people. And so I started reaching out to my clients and just checking in. And they would say, tell me how things are going. Well, we've moved everybody home, but gosh, how do you lead in a virtual world? How do we still engage with our customers given that people are, on the screen? How do I know that people are productive? My head just started going crazy with the products and services I could develop to solve those problems. Once I started solving my customers' problems, new business started coming in. So that's really where you need to start.
I love this. And so as a rep that's doing this, this helps also shift like the language you would use, let's say in a cold email, or if you're doing a cold call, let's say, for example, and it's like, hey, I'm reaching out. We work with a lot of people like you, and I'm hearing them tell us this. One way that they're solving for this is this. I have some more ideas. Love to share it. Is that the kind of approach that you're talking about here?
That's exactly the approach. So, for example, I built these couple of products around selling virtually. And so I just started reaching out to other people in the healthcare and the finance industry, say, hey, I was talking with 3 of my top clients. They said their biggest issues are boom, boom, boom. We developed a product that can solve this problem in basically, 1 hour training. I'd love to talk to you about it. Well, here's what happens is, first of all, that email, the new prospect recognizes themselves in that email because it's not my language of the problem. I heard what my customer said. I use their language. That is so key, Jason, because you and I could be talking about what are the biggest challenges that the technology industries are facing today. And in essence, we'd be right, but we wouldn't be using the exact words they would use. Versus if we talk to them, they'll give us the language. And then I use that. I create the products. I solve my customers' problems. But then I use that to then open new markets. The other thing is talking to your existing customers is the easiest thing you will ever do. They love you. They want you to reach out to them. And then the moment they give you that information, now you have a reason to cold call. And the moment I have a reason to cold call, oh my gosh, I got a cold call because I can help you. I know you have these problems. And so now I have a reason and I build my entire pipeline on that. And for me, my entire calendar evaporated, all my revenue evaporated in March. And here I sit 3 months later, just using that strategy. And 2020 may be a better year for me than 2019.
Oh, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
have a couple questions that are related to this that I want to get your insight on, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. It's like Lika, I think it is. She said, "So, how exactly can you identify a company's problems throughout the
Yes.
chat?" And maybe to give some more context into that, because where I think she's going, and someone else asked another question sort of related to this, is are you expected to kind of know what your prospects challenges are when you're prospecting because you've done that research with your customers? Like you're not just going to a prospect and saying, "Hey, what are your challenges? I'd love to help." That's not the approach, right?
Right. These are such great questions, and you've got to go out on a limb here to me that it really is this simple. But you have to be a really good listener because your prospects do not tell you their challenges in terms of your products and services. They're telling you their challenges in their daily lives. So you're going to ask questions like, "Hey, Jason, this is Meredith. I know it's been a while since we talked. I know a lot of crazy things are happening, but just tell me, I'd love to know what's going on in your business." And Jason starts to tell me that, wow, it's been such a wild ride. And I've got customers who this pandemic is taking business over the top. I've got customers that have no business at all. But let's just assume you're somebody who has no business at all. Oh my gosh, Jason, it's really a challenge. We were in the event space and now everything's evaporated. I've had to furlough most of my employees, and I'm worried that when I bring them back, are they still going to be there? Are they still going to be want to come to work for me? Ding, ding, ding. She needs a way to keep her furloughed employees engaged. So you're just
Mm.
asking open-ended questions and you're listening. And if you can't do it in the moment, don't worry about that. Just take notes. Just take notes and say, "Oh my gosh, Jason, this was a great conversation. I'm going to walk away and think about a couple of things and come back with a couple of ideas for you." And then just take those notes, go get a colleague, and just start to brainstorm over what your customer told you, and you'll start to come up with products and services either that you have or that need to be repositioned. But you have to really listen. And you're exactly right with the prospect. I'm assuming with the prospect that I understand their challenges because I'm saying, "Hey, I've spoken with other people in the event space, and one of the biggest challenges they've got is keeping furloughed employees engaged, how to generate revenue when most of their events have gone away, and then how to maximize efficiency with the employees they've got yet left. I developed 3 products for that. Let's have a conversation."
Oh, and when you do this, I'm curious about your feedback on this. Correct me, please, if I'm wrong here. I feel like a lot of people, when they prospect, they expect the prospect to join the conversation in their head instead of joining the conversation in the prospect's head.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It's exactly right. I want, whenever I send an email or I make a phone call, I want the prospect to say, "That's me. She's talking to me. I recognize myself in everything she's saying." The other thing I want to say about prospecting is the chances that you are going to interact with somebody at the exact moment they're ready to buy are slim to none. So prospecting for me is a series of drip campaigns. Jason, I may send that email to you, but then you're going to get something from me a couple of weeks later. And then I use a 70-30 split. 70% of my prospecting is adding value. It is sending things that can help them grow their business, give them peace of mind, or make money. And 30% is me asking for business. So I'm using that. So I decide that once you're going to be a good prospect for me, I'm going to hang in there probably a good 12 months, if not longer.
Wow. So I think the big takeaway here, it looks like that people are getting is I need to have conversations with my customers to which are the easiest conversations of all to have. And that's going to
Right.
help me create the language and really understand, well, what do my prospects probably want? Because they're essentially the same types of companies. And for the most part, companies have very similar problems. And the people at
Yes.
those companies tend to have very similar problems.
Yeah, it's that, once you have some conversations with your customers and you start to go down that same vertical, those people in that same vertical are pretty much having the exact same problem. I also feel like something about me shifts when I start to prospect with that too, because now I got something, right? Like I've seen this work with my customer. So now I've got something I know can help other people. And so I just completely change from a sales perspective.
I love this. So one of the places I think we can take this conversation to is that this strategy, this technique that you're talking about here, was that something that was still effective pre-pandemic, pre-COVID? Like if, like how and if has the, that didn't make sense. How, how has the strategy changed? Have you seen this change at all with COVID and with the pandemic and that sort of stuff compared to selling last year, let's say, from a strategy
Yeah.
standpoint?
Yeah, I think it always was important, but let's be real. I mean, pre-COVID, we were all just kind of sitting there and business sort of rolled in, right? Like in a good
Mhm.
economy, you don't have to put the amount of effort you have to put into it. But here's the thing. This is why the strategy is so powerful right now, because your competitors are doing one of two things. Number one, they're not selling. Or number two, they're still selling in a me focused type of way. I had somebody prospect me the other way to do a new video reel for speaking, a virtual reel. And the email that I got was, had nothing to do with me. It was all about their services and how they could deliver something and how they could do it at a cheaper price. At no point did it talk about my pain point. And when people are going through uncertainty, they want to be heard, they want to be understood, and then they want to feel like you have the answer. They're running to the people who are confident. So I think one of the worst things you can do in today's marketplace is not show up, you know? But you don't show up selling a product. You show up listening first so you know which product to sell. And that's really, I think, how the strategy changed.
Man, I mean, if you're watching this and you're not super motivated to prospect right now, I'm like fired up. I want to go out there and
Good.
make some phone calls.
Yeah. Well,
um,
and because I do want people that are listening to this and watching this to know that what you have to offer, we are all essential right now. There are customers out there that really have a pain point, and you can do a little change on your product or service and really help them get through this crisis. And so you got to get out there.
so I love this. So a couple quick questions. It looks like, and several of these are related. What is your suggestion to reps that have no existing customers and they're trying to develop a new territory and they happen to have to do this like right now in the
Yeah.
middle of all this stuff?
Yeah,
Skylar
you're
asked that
going.
question.
Yeah, Skylar, you're going de novo. The biggest thing that I think when I open de novo markets is that we start just with that. We take advantage of the fact that we're new and we don't have any existing customers. And so what I do is I tend to split it. In half. One, I'll go to service organizations, business organizations that work in my industry. So let's say you're in medical device or something like that. I might call the Medical Device Association and say, look, I'm looking to get into this market in Austin, Texas, and I really don't have any existing customers right now. Who are some people in your industry that I could interview, that I could talk to just to get that information? Then I'll use that then to prospect with. The other thing is that I'll just go into that market and I'll call the Chamber of Commerce, or I might just call a couple of people and say, look, I'm new in the market. I'm not looking to sell anything, but you look just like my ideal customer. So I'd like to just interview you and get some advice. I find if I've asked for advice, I get business. If I ask for business, I get advice. So if you're going de novo in a market, just really use the first couple of weeks just to go around, get the lay of the land, ask people for advice. You're going to get the same information. You're also going to get some business, I guarantee it.
Oh, that's really good. And essentially this is another way with along with that first strategy that you shared where even as a rep, you don't need your marketing department to create these insights. This is just a piece of information that you got from doing a quick interview that literally it could be a LinkedIn post, or maybe it's just notes that you have and you put some of that wording in your emails, right? The insight doesn't have to be this fancy thing is sort of what I'm hearing.
No, no, no. In fact, I believe that fancy always comes second.
Mhm.
Is that really, as salespeople, the thing we're good at, the value we bring, is nobody intimately understands the customer better than we do. So to me, we need to find these things out, and we need to feed these things to marketing. And marketing will create fancy later and make us more efficient in things. But I want to be finding those things out on my own. It's why I believe that that salespeople are more valuable than they've ever been right now, because a slick marketing piece, it just doesn't matter. People want to be heard, and they want to deal with the people who say, I understand your problem. I've adjusted my products, and now I'm able to help you with them.
I love that. So you get one heck of an answer there, Skylar. Chris has got a very similar question, and I think this is a really good topic around, I think a lot of SDRs, especially if you're working in SaaS or BDR, they get a new territory, they're fresh to the company, and they immediately just start doing a ton of cold outreach. They don't do any relationship building, which is also prospecting. Cold
Yeah.
outreach is just one form of prospecting. But Chris asks, are you saying that this is a great time to improve our partnerships with other companies who offer services that we don't, so we can bring them into the conversation if the prospect needs their service?
Yeah, that's a boy, you hit the nail smack on the head, because that's another step in thriving in uncertainty, is that competition now becomes collaboration. Is that the problems and challenges that both our customers are facing and that we're facing, they're too big for one industry, they're too big for one sales rep. So you need to be pulling in your partners, and you need to be thinking about who you can collaborate with. I'll just give you a quick example. I've got a client that's in the healthcare space, and they're phenomenal in the healthcare space, but all of their selling was face to face. They either had to get in to see physicians, or they had to get in to see pharmacists and everything. And COVID hit, and the group had no ability, no idea how to sell virtually, which was the clue for me to begin develop a product. But to shorten their learning curve, I connected them to an IT company who was phenomenal at selling virtually, but their space, which was the entertainment and travel and tourism space, had evaporated, was in pain, and they wanted to get into healthcare. So I had those two working together to help the healthcare industry help IT get into healthcare, and to help IT to help healthcare learn to sell virtually. So, and none of that had anything to do with me, but oh my gosh, they love me, right? And are both using me for a lot of things, because I identified a problem, I shortened their learning curve, and I did it through collaboration. And so we definitely need, you are so smart. That is so right. You definitely need to be thinking about, once you understand the biggest problems facing your customers, begin to ask yourself, which ones can I solve? And then which ones do I need to bring in, either competitors or colleagues or peers or people that I know that can help solve that. What you want to be in today's marketplace is the resource that your customers are coming to for the challenges and problems that they face. You want to be that step ahead. We're so much more than what we traditionally think of as salespeople right now.
And it sounds like great strategy, by the way. It sounds like this also connects to what you brought up at the very beginning about reps feeling like they're bothering people,
Yeah.
and then being too vanilla, too much the same. This is the competitive differentiation, right, between you and another rep. If you're selling products that are essentially the same,
Yeah.
this makes you a resource with your customers and keeps you top of mind, it sounds like.
Exactly. It is that differentiator that says, I always say that what you want to do is get your customers from saying, I love working with Meridith, to I can't live without Meridith. And so that's really when I wrote Thriving in Uncertainty, I wanted to give people the strategies and the steps they needed to thrive in an uncertain marketplace. But really, for sales professionals, these are the tools then you can end up sharing with your customers, so they see you as more than that person who sells a product. And they're the tools that you need to be one step ahead. See, typically we think like somebody's talking about the fact that, my client's talking about the fact that, they need to get into the healthcare space. Well, technically that's not my responsibility. But if I can connect the dots for them and I can make that easier, that builds that trust, that builds that connection. And as I go back to sell other things, it's really easy. And then that bleeds into referrals because they're talking about me, right?
Love this. Yeah, and John, that should answer your question as well. I gotten this question a couple times too, just along the lines of prospecting and relationship building. What are your thoughts on name dropping, companies that you work with?
Yeah, I'm a huge name dropper. I call it social proof, but I always use it when I prospect. Always, always. So if you read my prospect emails, number one, I keep them really short, but I might reach out and I'd say, hi Jason, I'm Meridith Elliott Powell. I work quite a bit in your industry. My clients are telling me these are their top 3 problems. We've created products and services that increase ROI by X amount, and then you'll see a testimonial. It's always in the top of my email. I use a testimonial because what people are looking for is, I don't know Meridith and I have to take a chance on her. And if I'm going to take a chance on her, it helps me a lot more if either somebody I know or somebody in the industry says she's amazing. So I'll use a written testimonial on occasion. I'll use a video, but it's pretty fast in my prospecting emails, and I get a really good response due to that.
And it sounds like, again, a key part of that, to reiterate for everyone, is like, if you have those conversations with your existing customers, those problems, you're going to nail those problems when you say our customers are having these problems that we help with.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the other, thriving in uncertainty. You took the time to really write this awesome book. What are some of the other, steps and things like that that we can take to redefine sales?
Yeah, number one is that, well, there's a couple, but one of my favorites is conditioning yourself for change. Is that this is change like you've never thought about it or really used it before. But I like to say that change is like a muscle, and you need to work it. You need to talk to your greatest opportunity. And if you wait for change to show up, that change will bury you and bury your market. I mean, think about taxis and Uber. Think about the hotel industry and Airbnb. And so I use a tool called a skeptic, and it's just a set of words: competition, economics, politics, technology, industry, and customers. And I tell my sales teams, I want you to spend 30 minutes a month, take 30 minutes out of your sales meeting and just brainstorm. What do you see happening in the marketplace? What do you see shifting in the marketplace in those areas? And what that does is, number one is it gets you focused on what's happening externally to your organization in your industry. And that's important because the majority of the changes that are happening are outside of your company. The other is it gets you talking about change long before change happens. And for most of my sales teams, it's let them integrate technology long before their competitors. They've seen mergers and acquisitions starting to happen before they're really announced, meaning they can change then and focus on knowing that these companies are going to be going under duress. So it's a good time to kind of attack their customers. That consumers are starting to, be much more like, if you were doing it right now, you'd start to say, wow, things are probably going to stick online at least through 2021. So we want to continue to be out there ahead in virtual. It just helps you guide and think about where we're going to put our time, energy, and resources to really maximize things. So I want you talking about change and conditioning yourself for change, because the more you're good at change, and the only way to be good at change is to be in shape for it, the easier you're going to flow through it.
That's awesome. And Jess asked again, what was the skeptic
Yeah,
acronym again?
let's see if I can do it right. It's society, competition, economics, politics, technology, industry, and customers. So you just take each one of those, brainstorm a little bit. But let me remind you, with brainstorming, there's no right or wrong. Everybody's just, what do you think's going on with customers? What do you think's going on in the industry? And then you write it all out, and then you all step back and look at it and say, is there anything we need to be paying attention to? Is there anything that we need to adjust in our strategy based on the changes that are happening? I'm a master certified strategic planner by training. And when I used to go get my certification every year, they wanted us to update a strategic plan every 3 to 5 years. Last year when I got certification, it was every 4 months. I'm guessing when they take us back this year, it's going to be every month you need to update a strategic plan. This simple tool will do that for you. Simple, simple, easy.
I love this because a part of it too, and I find this with reps that are a little bit newer on the job, is it's hard for them to have conversations with essentially executives, C-levels and VPs, because they aren't talking to some of the macro kind of things going on. And it sounds like this exercise, I mean, this is really cool. Just sitting back and like being able to look at everything and see the trees for the forest, so to speak. Yeah, and I'm assuming that this is, again, something that we can take into a prospecting conversation. Hey, we're seeing this as a trend in the industry. Here's how some of our customers are adapting. I'd love to share with you what we're seeing and how you can adapt. Is that, again, the sort of approach here?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, sometimes I take part of the skeptic in to work with my prospects. I'll say, tell me a little bit about, what do you see going on in your industry? What's kind of happening with your customers? How is technology impacting you? The economy's going through a big shift right now. What are some of the impacts with you? And again, I'll just listen to them. But people appreciate it too, because it's, the crazy thing about change is it's the thing we know is going to happen, but we're programmed to wait for it. I don't know why we are, but we are. Yes, change is going to come, but we're programmed to wait for it. And so this tool forces you to be a step ahead. And if you can be a step ahead, you're a step ahead of your customers, you're a step ahead of your competition, and you have the ability to easily and effectively move through change. And change is not as hard if you feel like you're controlling it.
Yeah, I love that. So again, another highly tactical thing you just throw on your calendar, 30 minutes a month. Yeah, make sure that you're doing it. Okay, along the lines of really tactical stuff here, because people are asking, what are your thoughts on this quality versus quantity kind of argument that we see a lot in prospecting? Because it sounds like what you're doing, it sounds like it's a very highly tailored way of reaching out to people, but you're also looking at, hey, these problems are going to be pretty applicable to most people that I reach out to in this industry. But what are your thoughts, and how do you coach and train and consult around quality over quantity, and how to balance sort of this mass blast that we see a lot today versus like a really highly tailored approach?
Yeah. This is probably going to be a little controversial. I'm a little bit in both camps. So what I ask my clients to do, and let me just say, anything that I am asking my clients to do, I am doing myself. And there's one tool that I want to tell you about kind of at the end that's gonna help make all of this even more quality. But what I ask people to do is to pick a set of prospects they're going to focus on for the year. I choose the number 60. Some of my clients choose the number 100. But basically, usually over the holiday break in December, we do some research and we pick 60 prospects that align as closely as we can to our customer avatar, our ideal customer. And then all year long, every month, we're going to drip on those prospects. They're going to get something in December, February, March, April, May, June, all through the year, using that 70% value add, 30% asking for business. Now, some of that is quality and some of it is quantity. I'm a big believer that I want you reaching out for business with prospects every single day. And the reason I want you doing that is because I believe you are telling the universe, I am looking for business. And so what's going to happen is some of those 60 to 100 are going to actually turn in to your customers, but also you're going to get customers from what I call the law of left field. I don't know why it works this way, but if every day I am reaching out in the world asking for business, business drips in from on some unknown place that I never ever thought I was going to get business. So it's a little bit of quantity and a little bit of quality. I try to make my prospect list quality, and the tool that I'm ultimately going to give you cleans my prospect list. But at the same time, I really just, I want you reaching out every day looking for business, because I find when I reach out, business comes in. So that's kind of woo-woo too, but hey, I'm wearing a tie-dyed shirt.
No, I love it. And if nothing else, it keeps you top of mind so that when you do decide to make that phone call, the person actually takes your call. Oh yeah, Jason's been that person that has sent me those really valuable insights the last 6 months. I definitely want to talk to him and hear what he's got to say, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Interesting.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
another thing that you talk about is securing your base.
Mhm.
What do you mean by that? And why is that something that we should be thinking about right now?
Yeah, so securing the base really is focusing on those existing customers. It really is going back in 4 to 5 years. Just because somebody hasn't done business with you in the last year or last 2 years, and even get old prospects and bring them back out and reach out and start to have the conversation. The one thing that COVID has done is it has changed everybody's situation. And that means that prospects that used to be cold could be hot right now. Customers that didn't need your services a year ago may need your services right now. So going back in and really locking down those existing customers. And then once you do, I want you to be asking those existing customers for referrals. You need to let people know that you're looking for business, because nobody knows what's going on with people right now. They don't know if they're open. They don't know if they're, if they're doing well. I do want to tell you one thing that I do with a hot prospect that's gone cold, because you mentioned it with keeping people top of mind. So we've all been in that situation, right? We've got that prospect, and that prospect is hot, and we've had that great conversation and everything looks good. And then the deal goes cold. They evaporate, they disappear. And so my mode is I'll reach back out to you and I'll say, Jason, enjoyed the conversation. Just want to check back in. Can we get back on the calendar Monday? You don't respond to me. Monday, I pick up the phone. You don't respond to me. At that point, I send an email that says, Jason, I know that your life has gotten busy and crazy. Please don't worry about keeping in touch with me. I'm going to keep in touch with you. I'm just going to be sending you some value add information so that when you're ready to buy, you don't even have to think about it. I'll just be there ready to handle things. And with that, I've given myself permission to continue to contact them so they don't find me annoying. I've also given them permission that they don't have to answer everything that I'm doing. And that allows me to stay visible with them, because here's what happens with hot prospects. You want to buy from me, you're excited, and then you hang up the phone and your best customer has an issue. Your kid gets a D on his report card and your mother fell and broke her hip. Like all of a sudden, things got more important than buying from me. And we have to find a way to stay visible without being annoying and releasing people from feeling like they have to respond to our messages.
And do you think that there's some psychology too in that? I mean, for the most part, in your experience, do prospects like rejecting salespeople? I don't really think that they do. And you're kind of giving them an easy way to not respond without feeling like a jerk and going into this sort of avoidant place where a lot of people like to avoid things that make them uncomfortable. So if it
Yeah.
feels like they have to say no to you and that's not something they want to do, they're probably less likely to respond, right?
Yeah. And I feel like, first of all, whenever you get an email, I don't care who you are, you feel like you have to respond. Right. And so once you say, please don't worry about staying in touch with me, their feeling about you changes. They're like, you get me, you understand. I really believe that every time I have a hot prospect, maybe I'm just self-centered, but I really believe their life just got busy. It really isn't about me. And I find if I can just stay visible in front of them, I eventually close the deal. But I have to cut them loose and make them feel like they're not responsible for staying in touch with me.
I love it. I love it. So there's one other place that I wanted to go that I think we have time for. And if you just over the last 90 days had to look at like what are the big glaring mistakes that you see salespeople or sales teams making and sort of navigating through everything right now, like what are some of those big things that you're seeing that people are just not really quite getting right?
Yeah, number one is they're not showing up. I mean, people are going to remember who showed up in this crisis and who was there for them, and not showing up. The second is, if you do show up, the mistake I see is you're showing up in a me focused way. There's never been a time when this is less about you and you hitting your goal. The crazy thing, if you focus more on serving, you're going to land far more deals. At the same time, another mistake that I see is the fact that that we're serving so much that we're not asking for the business, and we're discounting our prices. When you're truly solving a problem and you can make a problem go away, price is not an issue. Not to say that I don't work with some of my customers who are in challenging industries, but when you're really rooted into solving that problem, don't run away from price. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that last tool I want to give you is that we're assuming that what worked in March is going to work in April, is going to work in May, is going to work in September, and it's not. And I ask my clients to use a tool called a seeds, a weeds, and a needs. And again, every 30 days, I want you to just look at this. And seeds are where you just reflect on your sales process. What's working? What do I need to keep doing? What's really getting me business? Weeds are what's weighing me down, what's tying me up, what isn't moving me forward. And needs are what do I need to be doing that I'm not doing that could actually land me more business. I did this a couple of months ago on my own business. And what I found when I looked at my calendar was I was spending too much time talking to people and not enough time talking business. And so I started color coding my calendar. And light green was leading to lead generation, dark green was revenue, red was transforming my business, and peach was a waste of time. And so it started to move my calendar. What I needed more of,
Yep.
right, was red, green. And so now I'm so protective of letting peach on my calendar. So I would say that by ending, by we assume because it worked before, it's going to work now. And the majority of things that are changing outside of your world. So please take that time to reflect and just really ask yourself and be open to shed fast and keep moving.
Oh, I love that. Seeds, weeds, and needs. It's kind of the really sort of cool metaphorical way to do like a start, stop, continue in like a
Yes.
very
Yeah.
fun type of thing. This is so cool because as a sales professional, you can look at your calendar and do the same exact thing. You don't need to be a business owner. You know, it's probably actually maybe more cut and dry for someone like that to do because there's really a clear ROI in their time. So we got about 9 more minutes here. If you're cool with it, Meredith, do you think we could get to maybe 3 or 4 more questions? Because there's a couple more questions in here I think that are good. Okay, so this is maybe for a rep dealing with a sales manager, but how do you get sales managers to stop worrying about getting the demo and more focus on like how well the rep is prospecting and like just doing the right activities? Because you brought that up at the beginning, and as a rep I could see like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like do good activity, but how do I talk to my manager about this if I'm not like getting those like really quick results and getting those demos that they keep pushing for? Neil asked that.
First of all, getting to the demo is you are so right. Getting to the demo is not what you're trying to do. We could talk about we could do a whole show on the mistakes of the demo. There's the only way that I've learned to handle a sales manager is by producing my numbers. And I would love to say that I have had more sales managers in my life that have helped me than those that haven't. But unfortunately, it's the other way around. And so typically I've had to manage my sales manager. And so first of all, I prepare myself to take the hit in the first couple of months. I'm just going to be in trouble with my sales manager because I'm going to do this according to the behaviors, according to the way that I know I'm going to land the business. But after that third month, I'm producing the numbers. I'm getting the numbers. And the moment numbers talk, if you produce numbers, Your sales manager will do anything you want your sales manager to do, because at the end of the day, they don't care about the demo. The only reason they're saying anything about the demo is because the higher ups are talking about the demo because the numbers aren't there. Numbers are powerful. And I always tell people, if you want to change the system, produce the numbers, and then they'll start to fall and do it your way. But in every situation I have ever been in, I have always had a sales manager on top of me, say the last corporate job I had. And in my opinion, they were always holding my feet to the fire to win the war and to win the battle and lose the war. And I just decided early on, I was going to lose the battle and I was going to win the war, and I would just get bloody in the first couple of months, and then we would start to do it my way after that. I wish I had a better answer for you other than to say, you are so right. Nobody cares about the demo. And when you get to the demo, the only thing they care about is the part of the demo that relates to them. They don't want to see your whole demo.
Oh man, there's so much there. That was awesome. Hopefully that helps you out, Neil. Jay Stein has a question, and this seems to relate really to like building rapport quickly. How do you get in so deep with a prospect that they're really willing to share their real problems? He mentioned,
Yeah.
how many calls, how many meetings, how can you shorten the amount of time that it takes to really get that relationship where they'll kind of spill their guts to you a little bit?
Yeah, I call it solving urgent need. And so you go in and you start having a conversation. I'm on the phone with Jason and say, tell me a little bit about your business. And I'm there to sell a widget, right? And Jason's talking to me about the fact that, oh, it's just been crazy. His business has been exploding since since this happened. But as salespeople, its biggest problem is they don't have any presence online. They don't have any vision online. That has nothing to do with my widget. But the moment that I say, hey, Jason, I've got a friend or a colleague that is really good at getting people up to speed really fast on LinkedIn and online things. And I'd love to connect the two of you just to have a conversation. You just do it as a consult. The moment I do that, I've solved his urgent need, which told Jason, I'm listening, he can trust me, and I'm more interested in his problems than I'm interested in my own. So far too often as salespeople, we ignore the problems that don't apply to our products and services. When whatever is on the mind of your customer, whatever they want to talk about, if you solve that problem or at least just acknowledge it, then you flip over on a whole level of trust, and you create connection. I know I sound like a broken record here, but listening is such an underutilized tool. Every person, no matter their industry, has a basic need, and that's to be acknowledged, to be heard, and to be remembered. And people want to hear their name. They want to know that you heard their problem, and they want to know that you at least acknowledged it or tried to solve it. And if you do that, it speeds up the connection curve so fast. Can
I
I give a
love
quick
that.
example? Can I give a quick example of that? Would that be
Yeah,
all right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Years ago, I was asked to come into, I was coaching a doctor, and he had made the decision to buy a $600,000 piece of equipment. I mean, he was just ready to sign the check for over $500,000 cash. And he nailed it down to 2 reps. He only wanted to talk to 2 reps about it in the final round. And he said, would you come in and listen as I do this? I said, sure, I'd love to. And I went in, and the day that we went in there, the 1 rep was already there, and the doctor was running really behind. In fact, an hour behind. He hadn't had lunch. And when he finally came into the room, the rep took it as a signal that he needed to move quickly because now the doctor didn't have as much time. The doctor sat down at the table, and the rep immediately launched into his demo. And I could just see the doctor's eyes glazing over. And actually, he was mad. Then the second rep came in, and said, sounds like you had a bad day, doc. And the doc goes, yeah. And he goes, the rep said, patient running late first thing, because obviously that rep was experienced. And the doctor just opened up. He said, not only was that first patient late 10 minutes, which throws my whole day off, but this happened and this happened. We never talked about the equipment, but he bought $600,000 worth of equipment from that second rep because it was urgent need. that first rep talked about what he assumed the doctor needed. That second rep was present.
Oh, that's such a great example. And this took me a long time to figure out in sales too, where it's like, hey, we're agreeing to like fix your problem together, not for you to buy my thing to fix the problem. Let's just focus on fixing the problem, because that might not necessarily include using my service right away or buying my product.
Right.
That was awesome. This has been so awesome, Meredith. I've taken like 4 pages of notes, and Heidi said you should provide a transcript of this because there's so many brilliant takeaways. So thank you, Heidi. But before you take off, Meredith, you have a new book coming out. You have some free stuff to give away. What do you want people to go check out, and where should they go to connect with you?
Well, they can go, and please connect with me. I'm a big believer that if you build your network, it will change your life. You can find me on LinkedIn. I tend to live there more than Facebook or Instagram or any place, but I'm out there. But if you go to my website, valuespeaker.com, the term value and speaker.com, you'll find a quick start strategy for thriving in an uncertain marketplace. That's yours. And as well, there's a purple bar across my website that says Emerge Successful. You click on that and it is full of free tools and resources that dive a little deeper into the things we've talked about today.
Awesome. And I just shared that link. So Value Speaker, you've just gotten some really awesome compliments. Pam said that you're one of the best speakers that she's heard in years.
Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. Jason, you have been a great interviewer. This has been awesome. I wish I could hang out all day.
No, hey, really appreciate you. I know you're busy. I really appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait to write up the takeaways from this and share it with everyone. So this has been really awesome. Thank you again, Meredith.
All right. Please connect with me. Thank you.
All right, everyone. We'll see you. Thanks for coming on.